Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Mignot, CEO of the Experience Agency, D Flash. Each week, I bring on a different person from business, marketing, experience, entrepreneurship, who's doing some game-changing work. And this week's episode is so awesome because I have the amazing Isis Arias, who's a brand and marketing professional, but so much more. And we'll get into all of that. But one of the most amazing women I have had the pleasure to know. And I'm going to talk about her incredible story, the things that she's done, the things that she's up to now. And as we're in this really unique time of the coronavirus, hearing from executives who are just, getting stuff done, Isis is one of those really incredible people. So it's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Isis.
Hi, how are you?
Just hanging out inside. Four walls.
Same.
And a tall building. Can't get out. The usual. It's all good. Yeah. How are you?
Oh, we're well. We're doing really well. We're hanging out in Brooklyn, got some kids running around wild and, we're all just hanging out otherwise, trying to get creative with our time and our space.
Well,
but yeah.
It's all we can do because we're trapped inside, especially when you're in New York.
Yeah.
So even though this is, being recorded during a pandemic and we're all stuck inside, the podcast does not change. And the first question never changes. So Isis, what was your first job?
My first job, like my first real job or like my first job? Because my first job was I was a host at a restaurant called The Office.
Perfect.
A lot of fun way back in the day. That was like in high school because like I
that
started
works.
Early. I was like, oh, I need a job. Like, oh, I can make money. And then I worked at like Macy's and Aeropostale and all those jobs that you take when you're like young and know nothing. My first job out of school was actually in publicity at Universal Music Group and a label called Decca, which is classical music, and did a variety of things in opera, classical soundtracks, and adult contemporary music. That's actually where I started my career in entertainment, really.
Wow. So classical music, what was that like?
It was honestly really great. I worked with the PR team and I had actually gone to school. That was like the focus that I had through school. So it was kind of like, oh, really all I manifested was that I wanted a job where I could wear sneakers and listen to hip hop. Like legit, like I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I just want to
comfort,
wear my dunks to work. And people were like, you can't ask for that. And I'm like, yes, I can. So I ended up in, I wanted to work in the music industry. And I ended up in this opportunity for the head of PR at the time. And, at Universal, you were allowed to wear sneakers to work. And I could listen to Wu-Tang and nobody bothered me. And it was cool. But I learned the business. It was actually really good to learn the business. Because I think when people were like, oh, I want to work in the music industry, you want to go like pop, hip hop. You want to go like,
the big stuff,
land, right? Like, or whatever. And I was able to learn the business of music without a lot of the flashing lights that comes with, when you're pitching to like, MTV, BET, et cetera. And so, I spent a lot of time at like, Lincoln Center and Carnegie Hall and like with Renee Fleming, and I worked on Andrea Bocelli's program. And I was, there was a variety of things that I'd learned that were really interesting in terms of how the music business worked without a lot of distractions. So it was actually a really good job. And I learned a lot, but I also was told by one of the professionals there that he was like, I think you need to move into marketing. Like, I think that's more, because PR is cool, but he was like, I sort of think you need your hands in multiple pots. Like, this is what I do, and this is how I operate, and I'm putting all these different things together, and I work with each team. So that was sort of like the first nudge amongst many nudges that came along the world of getting to where I've ended up. But yeah, that was the first real job.
Wow. Well, if you're going to start out at a record label. My goodness, that's right. But it's true. It's funny. Like, a lot of times your folks like, oh, I want to get into this industry, and you're like, well, actually, you never ever think about it that the industry has many different facets, and if you can get in somewhere where you can get your hands into it without all of the drama, then you can actually really get into it and know the fundamentals. Like same thing of my first job. Like I ended up working for a fashion company, but it was a consulting firm that worked with licensing for fashion companies. So like I got to see the business of the fashion industry, like that whole other side, as opposed from the stuff coming down the runway. And I learned so much about business because I got to get under the hood and watch some really good people as they were like, doing their stuff.
Yeah. And I think that it's interesting because I think with a variety of industries in general, depending on the side that you're on, you can deal with a lot of ego. And, I just ended up working with really great people that just really wanted to support their artists and promote their artists. And it wasn't about me as an executive and like what I'm trying to do. It was really just like, you're working with the top artists of their field with their craft, and like it's still really amazing to be in those spaces and in those rooms, but you learn, it's very humbling in a way, which is nice to start.
Yeah, you learn early on like how to be humble, how to listen, how to take direction, and navigate in a much more different but important way, and it comes in super handy as you build out your career. So after classical music and getting the first nudge about marketing, how did we end up here? What's that story?
It's funny. I say that's the first nudge that I think was coming from a professional point, but I saw things early on when I was in school. I managed to get down to Miami for spring break, and it just happened to be Winter Music Conference. And I ended up meeting a ton of people, including a group of guys that were essentially doing things with parties, and they were essentially bringing people to these parties, and they were giving out free things, and they were doing all of these tactics that I had no words for. All I knew is that this crew had this party bus and they were bringing like 30 to 40 people in the club all at once. And then they had ins at all the parties and all the fashion shows. And then they were like giving away free sneakers or like giving away gift bags. And I was like, what is this? Like, I have no idea what this is. But I was like, yo, these cats are getting paid to like party and give out free stuff. Like, I want in. I had no idea what it was. I didn't know what influencer marketing was. I didn't know what seeding, sampling. I didn't have any language, but I knew it was cool. And like, PR is kind of like, oh, you represent artists and you can like, you're talking to press, and it's how do you communicate with audiences and or consumers or whoever you're communicating with. And so it was like, I'm already in a similar lane, but not in that lane. And I mentioned that because I think after music, so I ended up at the first label, then I was at another one, and then, music was sort of changing drastically at the time because digital came and just smashed everything. And, I ended up on my own for a while and started really taking on these different projects and really learning marketing from the ground up. It was, working on sampling programs for Sprite Green and, influencer programs with different sneaker companies. I was doing a variety of event things. So I was picking up these projects with different people that I had sort of just networked and worked with over the years. And one of the guys that I ended up meeting that first year in Miami ended up taking a role at a clothing brand. And he was like, yo, I'm taking this VP role and you're coming with me. I was like, all right, bet, let's do it. So, I ended up as the senior brand manager there for, over 2.5 years, really just like restructuring what this, at the time we weren't calling it a streetwear brand, but this like urban men's clothing brand could do. And where, rebranding it from, what kind of logo, what's the presence, how does it show up in the world, what's the strategy, how do we show up with events, so what's the experiential plan, and then after learning that, it was like I had been in all these different worlds when I was on my own freelancing, I was contracting with all types of companies. I'd worked on a spirits brand. So I was with Hennessy for a couple of years, Reebok, and a ton of different event things, from like Google to like Nike. I mean, all types of different things. So I had worked on beverage and spirits and apparel and like all of these different lanes. And I remember thinking like, maybe I should go get like a job, like a real job, right? Because like, I've been playing around for a while, right? Like I've been just like doing all this fun stuff. I've been giving away free liquor, free sneakers. I've been like,
as one does, it makes friends wherever you go.
I've been doing all the things that I said I was going to be doing. I've been traveling, hanging out. I should get like a job, like a real corporate job, so I can learn corporate stuff. Yes. And I went to this interview with this head of global recruitment at some major agency, I guess at the time. I can't even remember what it was. And she looked at my resume and she was like, I don't get it. She was like, I just don't understand. None of this fits. And I was like, oh, okay. And it was sort of crushing. I was like, oh my God, what have I been doing with the past whatever years of my life? Like I have just been like, doing pretty well for myself. I thought, in my 20s, I was like, yeah, I'm hanging out. I'm doing all this really cool work. But I hadn't really learned how to position it in the way that made the most sense with all the different types of work that I was doing. It was influencer marketing and nightlife and, like all of these different types of things that I had been doing. And it really did have an overall thread of experiential. It had a thread of brand marketing. There was, but I hadn't really learned, again, enough of the language to position that way. And a friend of mine actually put me up for this role at Complex. And I was like, nah. and not because I didn't think Complex was cool. At the time, my daughter was 2. And the job description said 50% travel. And I was like, nah, because I'm on the road enough as is. I'm already doing all the tent poles. I'm already like, we're touring. The clothing brand was actually owned by T.I. And so we had done, the T.I. Lil Wayne tour. We had been all over the place. And I, was in different markets already. I was like, I'm not going to travel more. I can't do it. And he was like, well, I already submitted you. So oops, you can have a phone call. And I was just like, okay. And actually, still friends with this woman that called me, and we had a conversation, and I was like, yeah, cool. This is, it's interesting. But like, I didn't want to say like I want it all in, because again, like I was like, can I do this type of work? Sure. But like, I don't know. Now my priorities have changed. Now I've got a family. How do I,
do this, right?
Do things and still work it out. And, it was the complete opposite from that other interview. It was like, you've done all of these things that really match our partnerships. And for this role of like leading the, at the time it was the promotions team was what it was called. And then we ended up moving it into just like more brand partnerships production. It was doing content and experiential and creating collaborations and all of these things. And it was in all of their partners were spirits, non-alcoholic bev, consumer packaged goods, like all the things that I'd sort of had some exposure to. Tech. Right. I think the only thing I didn't really work on was like tech, was auto and government. But like, once you learn client stuff and you sort of,
you can do anything,
how the brand works, you're just like, oh, okay. And so I ended up there for, a pretty, a pretty sizable chunk of time. It was over 4 years, and I really enjoyed it. And, I also had been manifesting, like, I want to work on bigger stuff. Like, I want to do something bigger. And again, like I go into these things manifesting these wild, these wild things. Like, all I want to do is listen to hip hop and sneakers. I mean, listen to hip hop and wear sneakers. Or I just want to do something big. And a few months in, they say, yeah, we've got this little project that we want to start called ComplexCon. And, that was pretty big. So, it's fun. It was fun. So I recently, decided to pivot out of it. I wanted to try something different. And so now I'm shifting into how to work in culture, because I've realized, again, I've consistently been in culture work for a while. And that's always been, I don't think I've ever like identified it as the intention of kind of cultural marketing in a way, because that's always been really important to me, is like our audiences and our communities. And so I'm trying to, work on what that pivot looks like. in terms of taking all these skill sets and moving them into different areas and industries and sticking into, you know, culture and arts, and what does that look like from an entertainment perspective, and, you know, how do we work with brands and experiences in a new way. So it's been an interesting journey, to say the least.
Oh, it seems very, very calm and stable, and no twists or turns at all. What are you talking about? Like, perfectly normal. Thank you for sharing it. It's awesome because, like, I think, well, you're one of my all-time favorite events people, because I see your work and I'm like, go girl, yes, yes. Because like it, you know, it's just it's wonderful to see, because like I know how hard it is. So when you see someone else doing it and thriving, you're just like you just want to applaud and stand up and cheer, because when people see the outside of it, they have no idea what it took to even make it look this pretty.
Of course. Of course. So no one gets to see the struggle.
Like I always say that we always need a little blood at every event that we've ever done, because like it's just like it could have killed me. So I know
it's like it takes a certain type of person, and like, you know, I say, you know, we're cut from the same fabric, because you have to be able to thrive in the chaos in a way where you're like, this is insane. What am I doing? Oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And
exactly.
Accomplished.
Like there's something wrong with us, clearly. But it's a good thing. Because like if it's not on fire, I'm not really interested.
No, like when things are going right, you're like, wait, so everybody's good. There's nothing, everybody's like, they're where they need to be, and everything is rolling and it's seamless. Like what? I'm confused, but it's great, you know, and I think you get better over time. I think it's always feeling like, I think it's a consistent feeling that you're growing, because I feel like being able to get through challenges and overcome them in a, you know, in that professional space of like an event, right? It's also that instant gratification, you know, that when it's over, you've done it, and you're going to get immediate feedback, whether it was great or if it was awful. So, you know, there's that part. But I do think that it does give us this interesting sense of calm. Like, you know, as much as I think all of our colleagues in the industry were freaking out, like, you know, all the events have essentially died in a matter of minutes. You know, it's like you just started watching your industry implode. What is so interesting to me is that so many of my colleagues that are in the space that are, you know, event professionals and producers and, you know, vendors and all these things, is like, we learn how to pivot, because you are so used to having to get up and pivot and like, okay, this isn't working, let's move to this. Hey, how can we shift it to this? Like everyone's shifting online. We're all trying to figure out virtual and digital platforms and all these things. And there's that hustle that is almost ingrained, because we are used to having to figure it out. And so obviously in a scenario where no one knows what the hell is going on outside and nothing has been figured out, I think we've managed to take that that sensibility and just utilize it to keep us a little calm, you know. And it doesn't mean that we don't have freakouts like, holy shit, how am I paying, you know, the mortgage or my rent for the next whatever few months. But I think there is this innate sense of like, it's going to be okay, because it's always okay, and we always get through it, and we all get through it together. So I think that just having this network and community and family really of fellow producers and people who have led professionally as, you know, executive producers, or people who touch experiential and just branding in general from a marketing perspective, is this idea of like, okay, there's a shift coming, and, you know, we got to just figure out where we are on this wave.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing. I think I always hear someone, if you want something done, ask an event producer, because no matter what the industry is, you know, we will figure it the heck out. And Absolutely. it's not about like, you have to understand that like, we're totally built differently for whatever reason. Like it's a set of skills that you pick up along the way. And then when they come to fruition, you have sort of this like superpower where you're super calm. And you're like, okay, let me figure this out and do this. All right, we're good. Yeah. And other industries, oftentimes, there are people like, I don't understand. Like, I ask almost every day, Laura, what are you doing? How are you going to survive? And I'm like, well, we'll just figure it out. Like, we'll figure it out. Like, there are multiple platforms. It doesn't mean, everyone switches to virtual events, because that's not the answer. But I do think that if you're an event producer on the sort of executive level, like, that there are other things you do,
right,
and that you can lean into those because you probably haven't had the time to do them because you can focus on just churning out event after event, or we all have insane networks of people that we know because of the work that we do. So,
right.
We'll figure this stuff out, and, and we'll be better for it, and we'll be stronger and more resilient, and, we'll find our way.
There's an amazing sense of transferable skills here. So it's
unreal.
we're throwing all types of little parties here at home, because it's like, you know what? Like, we're not doing anything outside, but we can definitely have some fun inside.
Speaking of which, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You will use your skills to go in 18 different directions. It's like, when we were talking to a client recently, we're like, well, you guys haven't done this thing in this particular market. I was like, I have built the most insane events around the world with the biggest brands in the world. Do you not think I can tell you how to do this strategy? Really? Call Naomi Campbell and ask her how she likes my events. And it wasn't like a humble brag. I was being a schmuck about it. I was like, seriously, it's like, this isn't that hard. Like, convincing someone to go to a thing they knew nothing about, and then not only have a great time, but then tell everyone what an awesome time they had, takes such a unique bucket of skills that can go anywhere.
Yeah.
But speaking of figuring out new things while we're in this weird little time, you have a couple of things that are just delightful. One, you're on Twitch now because as you should. How'd that come about?
Friends. I mean, let's talk about like the network, right? Like, I think everyone was like, oh, there's something happening. Like, how do we band together and do something creative and interesting? And my friend Thomas has this agency, and we've been talking again, like, this is how the network works, right? Like, we had been talking to this agency about potentially doing some work for us at one of my previous roles, and we've been talking for a while, and then we actually didn't have an opportunity that made sense, but we were, you always stay in touch with your people,
of course,
right? Like, you identify the folks. And he had left a corporate job to start this agency with another one of his colleagues. And, he hit me like, hey, when all this started happening, he's like, yo, we're starting this channel. And we want you to be a part of it. I was like, what? So, they started Stimulus TV. And the whole idea is that they were going to get, creative friends to participate in, whatever your skill set or sort of interesting craft was, and share it with the world. And we are actually doing it voluntarily for the United Nations COVID Relief Fund. So Stimulus TV has an account with the Relief Fund, and all of our efforts, any donations that are taken from viewers, are going to support this fund. And then they have set up a way where they have our they're actually benefiting the hosts, essentially, where if you do donate and you want to donate directly to your host, you can. That's not necessarily why I'm doing it, because I'm like, cool, $75, I like it. But it was sort of fun, and it's a funny instance because people had always been talking about like, hey, can you do cooking stuff? Can you do more videos? Can you do things live? And live makes me so nervous because I am not a classically trained chef. I have not yet gone, and I say not yet because people are still asking me to. I have not yet gone to culinary to learn the exact skills. But again, my first job was at a restaurant. My jobs all through college were restaurant, outside of the retail gigs that I had. And I really loved being in spaces of food. Anyone who knows me knows that if you invite me for food, I am always down to eat all types of different types of food. Anyone who comes to my house usually knows that there's some semblance of food that's happening, and most people are in my kitchen when they do come to visit. So it's something just like ingrained. It's more than a hobby. It just is. It's how I sort of show love. And I say that actually there's a woman who makes this really awesome apparel, and there's a shirt that she has that's food is my love language, which is so funny because I had been saying that before. Like, that's how I show that I care. And Izzy Crocker sort of was this lovable nickname that I caught because I was like, baking cupcakes for friends'
Mm-hmm.
birthdays. It was just like stuff that I like doing. It's my creative space. I found that in the kitchen, I was the most comfortable, and I grew up cooking, and it was where I could be creative safely because, you can just tweak things and you can play around with stuff. And so because of that nature, I don't really have recipes. People are asking for a cookbook. I have to figure out how to sit down and write things down because I don't tend to measure unless I'm baking, because that's important. So make sure you measure things out when you bake, please. And just learn different techniques about not over mixing or over kneading or things like that. But yeah, it was sort of just this fun thing. And they had actually asked, my husband's in healthcare, and we've got, like I said, a couple kids running around here. And so they were like, we're really interested in how you guys are dealing with this pandemic and, what you're doing at home to stay sane. What are you guys eating? And like, what's your husband's take on what's going on out there from a professional perspective? And we were like, yeah, sure. We'll put something together. And so
of course.
It's sort of just become the Sunday cook up. You hang out in my kitchen. If you were like one of my friends that was coming by, this is probably what Sunday would look like anyway. You're going to come hang out on the counter while I cook something, whatever it is that I'm cooking. The kids are going to be in and out of the kitchen. Sometimes they'll help. Sometimes they'll eat. They'll just taste test, because that's literally, they're always like, can I get the spoon? Can I use a finger? Can I taste test? That's their role. And, Steph kind of hangs out. And that's it. It's just sort of a glimpse into our household for the weekend, which I think is kind of funny because there's a sense of normalcy. And again, like I said, live makes me nervous because it's like sometimes I burn stuff, sometimes I like it, I don't get it right, sometimes it's not what I expected. And one of the Sundays I definitely dropped the cake, which was pretty funny because my daughter like narrated it. She's like, and mommy dropped it out the oven. I don't know what happened. I think it just like slipped. And I was so excited about it because it looked beautiful. And there was parchment paper, so it just like slipped out
right through.
It was fine. Yeah, it was literally just like it broke, but like we covered it with frosting. It was fine. Yeah. But it was just one of those really funny moments. Like, yeah, we're live, and I can't do anything about that. So, yeah, it's a fun moment. But yeah, we've started this little thing, and I don't know where it goes or what we do with it, but it was sort of fun to have this moment of like, let's just hang out in the kitchen. This is what our normal lives would be if we had people over. So now we invite an online community of viewers to just hang out with us.
As one does. Like, that's the thing. It's like you lean into more of your passions, and you're like, all right, cool, come along for the ride, y'all. It'll be fun.
Yeah. That's definitely it. But it's interesting too, because I was like, I hadn't been on Twitch, like even just as a platform. I was aware of it, and I thought it was sort of just a platform for gaming, and that was the audience. But they're really growing this platform, and there's a lot of viewers on there as a platform. So it was also a really interesting case study. Again, on the back end, it was like, yeah, I'm going to do this thing, but it was also like, oh, how does it work? And how are we getting different engagement, and how does this chat thing work? So it is really interesting to learn it as a platform that I wasn't as familiar with. So it's cool.
It's what us as, event professionals do. Like, we're just going to try new stuff and, again, figure it out. Like, You can't go wrong. And I think that's the thing where it's like, we're all looking for different ways and different outlets to sort of use our skills and talents, that the ones that, again, we may have always been using, or ones have been sitting there for a little bit, and now that we are not traveling all over creation, can brush up on. So it's I think it's ideal for us to sort of just not take all of it forward and see where it takes us. And the other interesting thing that you do that I'm a huge fan on is Pep Talk Tuesdays.
Yeah.
And I have to say, as many a time I have heard one of your talks, and been like, I so needed to hear that today, so I don't go and strangle somebody. So thank you, Isis.
I am happy that you are not strangling people because I share messages
of warmth. So what made you start that?
So Pep Talk Tuesdays started as a newsletter. It's only recently become a video format, which means that I haven't been writing, and I should go back to that. But it was everyone needs a pep talk. And I found that there were moments that I was having really similar conversations with completely different sets of friends, on very similar topic in a week. And I just kept noticing it. I was really just paying attention, and, we would be talking about all types of different things. But there was sometimes a thematic, and even when there wasn't, there was just things that I needed to say to myself. Like if I wake up in the morning and I'm feeling a little funky, like how do I get myself moving and motivated? And I realized that a lot of these things, a variety of people relate to. Everyone goes through a range of emotions at any given time, depending on what you're dealing with in life. And it's very human. And I think that for me, it was just, how do we offer something that may or may not resonate with you either, and you catch it whenever, like sometimes you're going to catch it and it's not really, you're not going to relate to it in the immediate, and sometimes you'll revisit something and you're like, oh yeah, that's exactly how I was feeling. And I think it's really just showing empathy and compassion for each other as humans, and how do we share the things that we go through in a way so that people feel supported, but also know, like, yo, I'm not crazy. Sometimes you do want to like curse somebody out, and sometimes you want to enjoy being happy. Sometimes you want to push people to go do something that we've all been. I'm great at procrastinating. There's a whole list of things I got to do, but it's like, how do you have grace for people in their moments and in their journeys, and understand where the process is. And that's just how I feel in general. I think with all of my, professional experiences, I have always felt that like we have to consider all of these things with purpose and with humanity, and like understand what our goals are. And so from a personal perspective, it's like there are things that everyone deals with as a human. And I think as a leader, as a manager, like having that sense of like, where are you at right now in your humanity? And how can I support that, knowing that you have to get a job done that you're getting paid for, and you have deadlines and deliverables and things like that. So yeah, pep talks are really just a way to share whatever's coming, whatever pops into my head, whatever is resonating, or anything that I've been hearing throughout the week with different people, with what they're dealing with, or maybe things people were asking for a lot of advice sometimes, or just to talk. And I was like, I got to share some of this wider to more people. So that's Pep Talk Tuesdays. And Tuesdays, I don't know why Tuesday. I don't like Monday. I don't.
No one likes Monday. You think I like Mondays? Please.
I've tried to shift it. My boy Matt had this email. It was like every day's Friday, and it was such a great thing to be like, yeah, every day's Friday. But then I was like, no, because then there's Monday. No one wants a Monday.
No one wants a Monday. No one wants a Monday. No one wants a Sunday night. Because then I'm thinking about like Monday. Like, damn.
Yeah. So Tuesday, I figured Tuesday was a good day. It was still early enough in the week, and it let me go through my Monday doldrums without, depressing anybody. You can't be really motivational on a Monday if you're not feeling it, because motivation Mondays, that's the thing. People love that. I'm not.
No, it doesn't work for me. It does not work for me at all. And I'm like, what lunatics are? Let me give you motivation on Monday. Get the heck out of Dodge. Really? Please. Like, that is not the move. I think, no, the reason why I think, I love it is that it is a refresher and a reminder of us all just getting a little bit of grace. And that's, I think even now, because like, no one even knows what day it is. Like, is today Thursday? I think so. Because everything's all blended together. We're all stuck inside. It's all super duper weird. So to have, like, I know it's Tuesday when I see your thing. But more like, it's hard out here. We all need a little bit of just a good pep talk to kind of get us in that mood of like, you know what? Things are going to be okay. It could be so much worse. And if you're able to watch this on your phone, then you know what? Things aren't that bad. So it means a lot to a lot of different, just to be able to hear that.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm glad you tune in, and I'm always happy when people, the best thing about that is I put it out, and literally there's days where I'm just like, oh, I don't know if this is right, or I don't know if I should be sharing this. And there's always one person. And if one person was like, oh my God, I needed that, or thank you. And like, I get private, like people are just hitting me privately. Like folks will text me like, yo, thank you for that. And what was interesting is like some of my like male homies would hit me like, yo, so real, that happened to me this week. And I was like, yo, like there's people that are really paying attention. And so it's really awesome, because I think when you share anything with the world that you're sensitive about, it's this huge vulnerability that's like really scary. So it's nice to hear that people pay attention, and that at some point maybe it's valuable and it resonates. So I love that.
Yeah, no, and I think, look, vulnerability, the ability to be vulnerable right now means more for lots of folks. And I think in the last few years, that has become much more of a top of mind for lots of folks. And I think as we delve deeper into this madness that we're stuck in, people essentially giving out their vulnerability and saying, like, kind of welcome to the vulnerability party.
Yeah.
Like, you are not alone. Because especially when you hear men saying that to you, that you know that you're hitting the right notes, because folks are like, yeah, this is weird. And having someone to say that really meant a lot, because I was like, yeah, we're good.
Yeah. I think it always validates your feelings when someone else like relates to you. I had a conversation with a coworker once, and I mentioned something really briefly that happened in a meeting, and I was like, yeah, because when that thing happened, she was like, wait, hold up, can we talk about that for a minute? And as soon as she said it, I was like, yes, someone else thought it was weird too. So I think it's always fun to get a little validation of like, yep, I felt that happened to me last week. Oh yeah, that was me. And it's good, at the end of the day, we all need to feel like we're not alone in this thing. And I think that speaks to our current state, but just in general, right? Like whatever you are dealing with, you're in whatever transitions you're in, whatever stage of life you're in, you always want to know that you are not the only one. And so it's nice to feel like, oh, you felt crazy too? Oh, word? Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm not crazy? Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
So thinking back on that now, what do you think you tell 25-year-old Isis?
Oh my God.
So many things, I'm sure.
I feel like it all works out. I think at 25, I was like staring at 30, and I was like, I've got so much to do. Because remember, I met this squad when I was in college, spring breaking, and these dudes were like in their 20s. And so I was like, oh, bet if y'all are like 26, 27 and you're out here doing all this stuff, I'm totally going to be a millionaire by 30. Like,
exactly.
Absolutely. Like, that's what's happening, because I got like way more hustle and I'm smart and like,
totally.
And I don't know, I probably had made cumulatively like $1 million but in my 20s, but not like in one fell swoop in my account. But I think my 20s were just like this really interesting space of like, let me just do all these different things and explore and discover it. And I think I would tell them like, every single experience counts, even the ones that suck. Totally you'll have so much value from those experiences over time, and the relationships that you're building are so key. And really just being a stand-up person. But like, listen to yourself. That's what I would say. Listen to yourself. I think in your 20s, you have no idea. Like, you can be so foggy and like not know which way to go and not trust that you have the answer. And so I would say, like, if you can sit down, because I was also, a chronic busybody. I'm always doing something. So, of course I was like running the streets in my 20s, because you don't have families and mortgages and all the things that are, adult things to worry
about. The adulting, yes.
I was running the streets, so I was definitely, doing all these things, and not, in this fake sense of like, oh, I'm hustling, I'm trying to be a boss. Like that was never, this fake sense of like, oh, let me do all these things so I can look a certain way. It was like, no, I'm really trying to make $1 million.
Yes,
so,
like I'm not playing with you.
But I think that you sometimes can take on things that you're not really sure you want to do. And you're like, is this the right thing? And I think now I'm much more aware, and I have an ability to kind of, use my own cognition and base off of past experiences of like, is this something that I need? Does it bring value? Just like that self the introspection that needs to happen, and that trust of self. I don't know if I was all the way there at that time. So I would definitely say, trust yourself, girl. Like, there's all of these experiences are so valuable, and you are in such a great space, and you're going to just continue to grow, but you're going to always learn. You will always grow. There will always be new opportunities, and, you know, you got to stay open to it.
That's awesome. And so key. I think, you know, it's like, I think sometimes people think, oh my God, I screwed up so royally. This is going to ruin everything. It's like, yeah, no.
Yeah, you will survive.
You will survive. You will have learned, okay, never do that again. But like, there was a lesson there, and you never, it's like, I think a friend of mine said to me once, like, you never lose, because even if you do screw up, you learn from that. And you're like, okay, that didn't work because of blah, blah, blah. And now going forward, if something like this happens, I can spot this and know how to navigate my way through, versus being like, oh, damn, this is not going to work again. So true.
Yeah,
and
but
so
you know what it is? It's like I learned, probably after getting kicked a few times, like, my lessons would hit me over and over again until I learned them.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
You know, it's like,
true.
Like, oh, wait a second, I've seen this movie before. Why
Why did I do it
again? What did I
did this again?
What? Groundhog's Day.
What did I not learn the first time? Shit.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, you know, I agree with you. There's always a lesson. Sometimes it's hard for us to identify and to hear and to see, and to be really clear on is what is the lesson, especially when you're dealing with just stuff that sucks, and like, you know, moments that you're like, what in the world? Like, how did I get here? Like, this is not what I expected. But there's always a lesson, and you might not see it for a while, but it's there. It exists.
Totally exists.
Yeah.
It's so true. So, you know, speaking of lessons that you learned and next steps that you may be, what in the world are you doing for your self-care? You're managing this crazy time with like 2 little kids, a husband, and the world around you.
So I've been doing a lot of meditation, which I'm very excited about, because I am over 60 days now with a consistent program. And one of my best friends and I used to do for Lent, actually, it was like, oh, let's, you know, we try to be additive for Lent as opposed to taking things away. And it was like, we're going to really start a practice, like really, like, you know, I've done a variety of, you know, meditations and workshops, and I try to stay focused, but it's hard. You know, you're busy. You're like, who has 10 minutes to sit still? Like, no one can do that. But it's, I have found that when I am consistent with it, that it does benefit my life. And so I have found a few different sort of like meditation programs where, you know, it's like a 21-day thing or a 10-day course or something. And that sort of keeps me like really on it. And there's so many free resources happening right now. So people who've never done it in the past, whether it's meditation or breath work, I think there's so many different interesting things that you can utilize. There's a variety of apps. I was actually just looking through a few of them because I think the Apple App Store had all these different apps that you can explore for wellness. And so that's been one thing. I try to do that in the mornings, or depending on if I'm workshopping something and journaling something, that might happen in the evenings, but I try to do that in the mornings. And then I'm trying to stick to strict bedtimes. Having a routine in the house, especially for the parents at home with children. I've heard that there are folks that are just like, do whatever you want, stay up all night, who cares? There's like no routine. My kids are smaller. They need it. We have to have bedtime. And also, like, I need the 8 p.m. hour on to just be, so I can do whatever I want to do. I can like play video games or read a book or get back on my email and do work or clean something that didn't get clean. You know, it's like, that's the time that I have to sort of just like relax and end my day. Now, on weekends, I don't give a hell. Like Friday night,
whatever,
Saturday night, stay up all night, hang out in your pajamas, eat pancakes all day. I don't care. Like weekends, I literally am just like, it's all good, you know? So I try to keep that balance of making sure that there's some sense of normalcy and routine in the house. And I think without being, you know, crazy about it, I'm not like, 7:59, get in your bed.
Go to bed.
You know, I do try to create these little routines so that the kids feel comfortable. I have some space to kind of just like relax. hang out with my husband if he's here, and not, working. And we've created this little tea time now. So we got sleepy time tea, which has lavender in it, which is really, and so I will
Helps
brew
greatly.
a little bit of that. I brew a little bit of that with some honey and some almond milk, and the kids get it. And we do story time and tea time. And that helps sort of like relax everybody after bath. And then it's, bedtime. And here's the thing. They don't always go to sleep. My daughter complains all the time. Like, why 8 o'clock is so early and it's still light out? Because like, we try to like start winding down like after 7. So by 7:30, they're like in their rooms. Like they're in a bed and a crib, and maybe they're sleeping, maybe they're not. But either way, I close the door and I go do whatever I want to do. So that is definitely my self-care, is I'm closing this door, and I don't care how late you stay up, but you are not going to be
coming out.
So yeah, I mean, I try to keep that rolling. And again, it is finding grace, because like it doesn't always happen. Like there's some nights where why are y'all still up? It's 8:48. What happened? Like I don't understand. So, it's like not every time we're perfect with it, but we're all trying to figure it out and be a little flexible with each other. But that is one thing. I try to protect my evenings and the time that I need for myself to just chill out for a little bit.
I think it's a great idea. Like you've got to create some degree of normalcy in a very abnormal time. And you got to make sure that you're putting yourself first, because, oxygen mask first. Otherwise, you can't help anybody else. So sleepy time. So lavender and honey. Good to know.
Yeah, so sleepy time tea, they have a few varieties, because I was actually just looking online to figure out how we're going to get more. But yeah,
Walmart.com,
celestial seasoning, sleepy time tea. You can also just get some chamomile. Chamomile is really nice and relaxing. Any, the herbal teas that don't have any caffeine in them, that, we also brew, which is a good immunity one. We do ginger tea, which is ginger, turmeric, and cinnamon sticks. And we do that, and they think it's chai. They're like, oh, this is our chai tea, and we mix it with some almond milk, and they love it. So tea time has become a thing for us.
Well, being English, I have my tea time like 4 times a day. I'm drinking way too much tea.
You know all about this.
Another really good one is a jasmine tea. Is like, very light, and like sometimes I do that for a night experience, tea experience. So I'm like, okay, this will just help me drift off to sleep, because stuff is wild.
Super soothing.
So soothing. So at the end of the show, I always ask them, I guess, especially during this unusual time of Corona, if they've got a give or an ask for the audience. So, Isis, what might be your give and or ask to the audience?
A give or ask. I want to give everyone some grace, because I think that that's been the one thing I've tried to find for myself in this moment. And that the thing I'm trying to give everyone else, for those of us that are working or not working, like giving everyone the moment to figure it out, trying to be a little flexible with everyone's, capacity, period, across the board. So I totally would give that as an offering, is I'm offering some grace to all of you, and hopefully at one point or another, y'all can give it back. Pay it forward. And maybe that's the give and the ask, right? Like I'm going to give you some grace, and I'm going to ask that you pay it forward and give grace to yourself, your partner, your kids, your coworkers, your colleagues, your bosses, the folks that aren't working, giving grace to, people that you were working with, to understand, like, this is not something that we can control, and it's not something that we, know even how to navigate totally. So, giving grace, I think, is one of the key things. That, and I would love to give everybody a cookie, but I can't physically do that. So I'm baking a lot.
I was going to say, virtually.
Just to make the world happy. A virtual cookie. Yeah.
That's amazing. What kind of cookie would it be? Just out of curiosity, because now I'm thinking of cookies.
I really want to make shortbread. This sounds so wild. I know. Only because it's you, and like I know you. Like I don't think I would tell other people this.
It's not like I have people listening or anything.
So I'm really fascinated with shortbread, because shortbread is just like butter, sugar, and flour. Like there's not, You
There's
don't need
nothing
a
in them.
leavening. I don't think you need eggs. I actually think there's no eggs in it. I was just looking at recipes because I tend to read a lot of different recipes and then just play around in the kitchen. So I've been thinking about like an Earl Grey shortbread cookie with like a lavender sugar or something. That's like in my brain. I might play around with that recipe for Mother's Day. I'm debating if I want to do it live because again, who knows? I could burn it.
Who knows? It'll be fun.
Not awful.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, I don't know. Right now,
okay, shortbread cookies.
It's not too sweet. It's not overbearing. You know, everyone goes classic chocolate chip, and I love a good classic chocolate chip, but I also love a toffee. Toffee cookies are just like my favorite. Chocolate toffee. But yeah, I've been thinking of a little fancy tea and floral
tea biscuit
for your tea. For your tea.
So tea biscuit.
You know?
Yes, yeah. A delightful lavender tea biscuit sounds delightful. I mean, I'm not wrong. Yeah. All right, so the order is 330 million. Just cash app, Isis, so they'll send you one.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just got the whole world having cookies. It's all good. But virtually,
I'm like, Christmas cookie tins should be an early thing. Like, I think we should do that earlier. We should do like a summertime cookie tin or something.
Oh my God, you kidding me? All I've been doing is like finding new desserts to discover or to make because I'm like, well, you know, it's necessary. So the Christmas cookies, are you kidding me? I have a friend who has a company. I should find out if she's going to do stuff early because.
Oh, yeah. Let me know.
Definitely, of
anyone
course.
Has a good place to order like bulk tins that will deliver, like Amazon or another little like maybe like a kitchen supply that's like affordable, kind of cheap. Because you know, at the dollar store, I feel like you can get tins at the dollar store.
Yeah.
But like a little like bulk tins, I might do a little gifting tins, especially for the neighborhood. Like it's really easy. Like the neighbors, like you try to like give a little joy to the people that are on your block because you see with them way more now.
Right.
Yeah, I think that could be a good giving thing to do. That's what I ask. People do something nice for someone else as a part of this. Give grace and do something nice for someone else. I think that all of us need to show a little compassion and humanity and some empathy. I know that we are doing a lot for those who are in healthcare and all the essential workers, but even your neighbor that just needs like a little bit of light, like share some light.
That's a beautiful way to end the show. Thank you, Isis. And I can keep talking to you for hours.
Well, I'm so glad we got to do this. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we'll throw all the notes in the show notes that you can watch Isis on Twitch, on Stimulus TV. And she won't burn stuff, we promise. And if anyone knows how to get bulk tins, also hit her up on Instagram so that she can give to her neighbors. That would be greatly appreciated. But yeah, like I said, you're one of my favorite events people in the world. So I'm so excited to have had you on the show. So thank you so very much.
Thanks, Laura. This was fun.
Awesome.
I love it.
It was making me laugh repeatedly. So, and that is our show.